Yunwoo lifted her eyebrows, as if she couldn't understand what he was talking about. Playing a trick on you? You're the lord of Luo City, and I'm just a vulnerable woman. How do I dare play a trick on you? But, your lordship, I heard that you found your natural mother. As her son, isn't this snow Ganoderma which could prolong her life the exact gift you should buy her? I did you a favor and you want to arrest me? A suspicious look instantly flashed across the bottom of Cloud Murong's eyes as he heard her tone of voice. He squinted his eyes, his gaze roaming over her. Gracefully standing there, Yunwoo lifted the corners of her mouth with a bland smile, looked back at him and let him size her up. This feeling. After a while, Cloud Murong raised the corners of his mouth. The sullenness on his face gradually dissolved. There was even a ghost of smile on it. I never expected that you're so eloquent, which reminds me of my goddaughter. He seemed to be sounding her out. Yunwoo lifted her eyebrows. You flattered me, your lordship. Surely I don't have the honor to bear any resemblance to your goddaughter. But this venerable mistress looks like my grandmother very much. He would be a fool if he still couldn't understand after she said this. It's really you. You brat. You've been away for so long, yet the moment we reunited, you gave me such a big gift. The sullenness and anger on Cloud Murong's face had been replaced by resignedness and affection. Naturally, Granny Medicine, who had been silently sitting on the side all along, also understood. Surprise and delight gleaming in her eyes, she stood up from the chair and was just about to call her name when Cloud Murong said, Mother, since this lady is Master Nangong's friend, surely we won't make things difficult for her. On hearing his words, Grandma Medicine immediately understood what he meant. Back then at Lien Village, all people saw that two grand assassins were hunting Yunwoo. Shortly afterwards, Cloud Murong mentioned that the two grand assassins went to Murong Mansion to look for Phoenix Wu. Though she had no idea who those people trying to find her were, she did know that Yunwoo was in danger and should keep her true identity a secret for as long as possible. Grandma Medicine walked up to her, barely able to dissemble the excitement in her eyes. Good girl, since you've come back, go to Murong Mansion and spend a few days with us. Yuner will give you a warm reception. Of course Yunwoo understood the undertone contained in her words. But she had no intention of seeking shelter in Cloud Murong's place. Besides, even if she did need shelter, given that her enemy was the incumbent queen, people in this Murong Mansion were not powerful enough to protect her even if they wanted to. In addition, since Grandma Medicine had returned to the Murong family, she didn't want to get Murong Mansion involved in this matter, lest Grandma Medicine be incriminated. That won't be necessary. There's something I have to deal with. When this is over, I'll leave. By the way, about that pestilence, did anybody go to Murong Mansion to look for anybody? Cloud Murong shook his head and said, No. Why do you ask? Is there anybody you want to find? After the pestilence spread, the Ouyang family in Water City sent a big sedan chair carried by 8 men to the village and respectfully carried Grandma Medicine to their mansion. Third uncle and other members of Murong family who were swollen all over had no choice but to pocket their pride and send someone to Ouyang Mansion in Water City to pick up Grandma Medicine. However, they sent people there 3 times but all their requests were rejected. Members of Ouyang family even shut the door on them. The distension of the venerable master of Ouyang family was reduced after a week's time, and he also regained his consciousness. Before long, he was able to get out of bed and walk. The news spread through the whole Water City and caused a sensation. Even the best army surgeon was unable to treat the rare disease of the venerable master of Ouyang family, but after a week, he fully recovered as if he had never been ill, which was really amazing. Thus, Grandma Medicine's reputation for her medical skills rapidly spread. On hearing the news, all those infected members of Murong family in Luo City could no longer forbear. So they sent another several batches of people to Water City. However, it was easy to evict her but difficult to get her back. Back then members of Murong family treated them in such a contemptuous manner, repeatedly saying that they were freeloaders. Even a handmaid dared to bully them. Yunwoo never tolerated anybody wronging her relatives and friends. As a result, when the two grand assassins were about to find her, Yunwoo asked Li Shuyang to do her a favor. She told him that he was to reject all of Murong family's invitations and raise a claim when the steward himself showed up. Eventually, she told him to request them to transfer Grandma Medicine and Little Leaf from Water City to Luo City with a big sedan chair carried by 36 men. They were to beat gongs and wind trumpets to welcome them back to Murong Mansion in Luo City. Because she wanted all residents of Luo City to see how Grandma Medicine and Little Leaf were welcomed into Murong Mansion. And she also wanted people of the Murong Mansion to remember that the real venerable mistress of Murong family not only was the rightful mistress but also had a forte. On hearing Cloud Murong's rhetorical question, Yunwoo blandly shrugged but didn't answer. However, her eyes shot in the direction of the doorway. "Your lordship, it seems that you have a visitor. Why don't you invite him in?" On hearing Yunwoo's words, Cloud Murong turned his head aside and looked in the direction of the doorway. Surprisingly, he had just turned his head aside when there was a knock on the door. Before long, a graceful, mild figure walked through the door. Dressed in a light purple robe, a gentle smile on his handsome face, his temperament as mild as water, the person who had just walked inside was Ouyang-ku. "Sorry to bother you. I just accidentally heard that the Lord of Luo City was right next door, that Grandma Medicine was here too, so I came here to send my regards." After walking inside, Ouyang-ku made these remarks, but his eyes rested on Yunwoo first. He was sizing her up and also sounding her out. Yunwoo's expression remained unchanged. She slowly poured a cup of tea for Grandma Medicine who was beside her, and then conveniently poured another one for Ouyang-ku and put it on the table on the side. Seeing this, Ouyang-ku smiled and sat down, as if he was an acquaintance of them. "Thank you, lady. May I have your name?" Yunwoo flicked a glimpse at him and asked in a seemingly curious tone, "You're the young master of the Ouyang family in Water City, right?" Ouyang-ku was briefly stunned and then nodded. "They're right. People keep saying that all members of the Ouyang family in Water City were born with a gentle, refined temperament. This is the first time I see it with my own eyes. Your reputation is well earned." Did this count as flattery? But after saying that, Yunwoo seemed to have suddenly recalled something. She suddenly leaned forward close to Ouyang-ku, widened her eyes and stared fixedly into his deep, black eyes, scrutinizing them. Even Ouyang-ku began to feel uneasy beneath the unduly intent look. He couldn't help furrowing his forehead. "Why are you staring at me?" It is said that all members of Ouyang family have soul control technique, that people will be immobilized if they stare at your eyes. I'm trying to find out whether you know how to perform that so-called soul control technique. Ouyang-ku's face abruptly darkened the moment he heard this. Almost subconsciously, Ouyang-ku stretched out his hand and pushed that face before him aside. "Who told you about that soul control technique thing?" Yunwoo frowned. After thinking for a while, she said with a seemingly frank and innocent look on her face, "It seems to be a pretty widespread rumor. Back then at the offshoot mansion of Murong family, the wife of Master Thousand Murong also performed soul chain technique. Do you think by any chance she is a member of Ouyang family? She doesn't deserve to be." Ouyang-ku's eyes darkened. But soon he realized that he seemed to have overreacted. Instantly, he regained his refined, mild manner. It was just that he was involuntarily giving off an air of coldness. Originally, Yunwoo had merely planned to sound him out, trying to confirm whether the mind control technique was from the Ouyang family. Because back then when she performed Soul Chain, that fatty once said in surprise that she was related to the Ouyang family. And afterwards she saw Thousand Murong's wife perform Soul Chain technique in the offshoot mansion of the Murong family. There seemed to be some kind of connection between this matter and the Ouyang family. Ouyang-ku watched her with a somewhat cold, sullen look in his eyes. "Lady, you seem to be unduly concerned with this issue. Do you know that soul control technique very well?" Yunwoo put down the teacup, idly raised her eyes and glanced at him. "I once saw someone use it, so I'm curious about it." But since Master Ouyang doesn't want to talk about it, let's just drop this. Judging from his reaction, she had a shrewd idea of what was going on. She just asked a tentative question, but he reacted as if she touched a raw nerve, so there must be some particular connection between that mind control technique and the Ouyang family. She wouldn't be able to get any further information, so she might as well drop it. Where did you see it? Ouyang Ke stared at Yunwu with a deep look. I already told you. In the offshoot mansion of Murong family, Master Thousand Murong's wife Luo Shanshan performed it. A lot of people saw it, Yunwu said casually. But Ouyang Ke's face darkened somewhat. Cloud Murong, who had been listening on the side, also briefly frowned. Master Ke, the auction is still ongoing. Maybe it's time you went back to your own box, lest you miss any good stuff. Clearly he was asking him to leave. With a frown, Ouyang Ke stared at Yunwu for quite a while before standing up from his stool to politely say goodbye to Grandma Medicine. And then he turned around and left. There's nobody you don't dare to mess with, is there? Where did you hear that the Ouyang family was related to soul control technique? After Ouyang Ke left, Cloud Murong confirmed that there was nobody eavesdropping, and then looked at Yunwu with a frown and asked this question. I already told you. Thousand Murong's wife, Luo Shanshan. But judging from your tone, you seem to know something about it. Yunwu raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Cloud Murong pulled a wry face. Luo Shanshan knew how to perform soul chain technique. Actually, all members of the Murong family had some soul control techniques, but it had nothing to do with the Ouyang family. In order to prevent her from going around to make inquiries, Cloud Murong said in a low voice, I don't know much, but one of my elders told some tales about it, saying that it was not members of the current Ouyang family but an ancestor of the Ouyang family's offshoot living 800 years ago who knew how to perform soul control techniques. He said that it took that ancestor 10 years to create a special skill he called mind control technique, which is the soul control technique you just mentioned. There are two types of mind control techniques and mind reading techniques, each of which has its respective cultivation method. As a result, their family members split into two sects to cultivate the techniques. The Ouyang family started cultivating mind control techniques, and the offshoots started cultivating mind reading techniques. However, mind control technique didn't bring the Ouyang family into prosperity. Instead, they nearly suffered an extinctive catastrophe, the cause of which was the Ouyang family itself. It turned out that members of the Ouyang family who cultivated mind control techniques obtained the capability of controlling people's mind. And those who cultivated mind reading techniques gradually developed the capability of reading people's mind. People's mind is complicated, and everybody has their respective selfish motives, though they were family. At first, there were just some family quarrels, but as time passed by, those quarrels escalated into an internecine warfare. It is said to be the most gory internecine struggle in their family's history, with heavy casualties and bloodshed everywhere in their mansions. In his fury, their ancestor killed those family members who cultivated mind control techniques and caused this internecine struggle. Then he issued a family injunction, ordering that all members of Ouyang family must not cultivate mind control technique from then on. He even destroyed the secret manual of it in front of all family members. After hearing this, Yunwu was somewhat surprised. If the secret manual was destroyed 800 years ago, did it mean that the book on mind control technique in her storage space was a fake? As if he could tell that Yunwu was suspicious, Cloud Murong continued talking. Actually, back then most members of the large family were cultivating it, so some of them definitely recorded the cultivation method down, but even a complete manual of mind control technique could not have remained complete after hundreds of years, not to mention incomplete ones written by them. That soul chain technique Luo Shanshan cultivates is evolved from an entry-level skill of mind control technique. Yunwu asked curiously, given your account, though hundreds of years passed by, members of the Ouyang family should more or less have some skills of mind control technique. Cloud Murong shook his head and smiled. The ancestor of the Ouyang family reached the highest level of mind control technique, capable of both controlling and reading people's mind. When he issued that family injunction, he used his unique capability to destroy all family members' endowments for cultivating mind control technique. After that, among all subsequent generations of the Ouyang family, nobody has ever succeeded in cultivating mind control technique. And the name, mind control technique, became a taboo in the Ouyang family, which is why Ouyang's face changed. The highest level. Yunwu was secretly dismayed. But since their ancestor was the one who created mind control technique, it was not surprising that he managed to reach the highest level. However, what surprised her was that he was able to destroy cultivation endowments of subsequent generations. How powerful did he have to be to do that? But I heard that a complete ancient book on mind control technique appeared a few years ago, which is from a straitened family of the offshoot of Ouyang family. Afterwards, the royal household got it in an auction. The royal household? Then it was the one in her storage space. She had thought that it was just a useful skill. Unexpectedly, it was of long standing. Then do you know whether that ancient book on mind control technique was real or not? Cloud Murong smiled, I don't. It's been hundreds of years. I'm afraid even members of the Ouyang family won't be able to tell whether it's real or not. On hearing this, Yunwu understood and nodded. In fact, she was secretly wondering whether that secret manual of mind control technique she got in the royal treasure house was real or not. And it was incomplete. On the thought that she had accidentally mastered the first level of it, she felt pretty good. That should be real, shouldn't it? By the way, this snow Ganoderma is for Granny. I won't take advantage of you. This is a chest full of gold. I think it's worth 300,000 taels. As if having just recalled something, Yunwu waved her hand and a medium-sized chest materialized in the corner of the wing. With a swing of her arm, she opened the chest, revealing gold ingots in orderly rows. It seemed as if they were brand new. Cloud Murong looked at the chest that had suddenly materialized, and then flicked a glance at Yunwu who had a casual look on her face, surprise gleaming in his eyes. A storage space. This girl really had a storage space. But he had no greed for it. Instead, he was a little worried about her. Kid, you have to remember this, an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. Under no circumstances should you let anybody know you have a storage space, because you might get yourself killed if you do. On hearing this, Yunwu raised her head, a smile in her eyes for the first time. Rest assured. I won't let any outsiders know about it. Cloud Murong was stunned by this remark. But soon his eyes lit up. Did this mean that she acknowledged him as her godfather? Though he had always been claiming to be her godfather in front of her and he had also publicly declared that she was his goddaughter, he knew clearly that she had never taken him seriously, which meant she naturally wouldn't regard him as her godfather. As a result, this remark of hers made him overjoyed. Even Grandma Medicine, who had been listening on the side, had a big smile on her face. Then come back with us when this auction is over. Yes. I've already had second mother and some others move to the other mansion. Nobody is going to make any noises again in our home. This time, you can rest assured and live with us. What Cloud Murong meant was that concubine Chu, Sky Murong and some others had moved to another place, that there was nothing she had to worry about. In fact, Yunwu wasn't worried. It was just that she must find Long Qingxie, return to the imperial city and revive her body first. Besides, this trip had taken her far more time than previously planned, and she had no idea whether her fake identity had been seen through or not. Not now. There's something I have to deal with first. But I will surely find another time. Cloud Murong and Grandma Medicine had originally wanted to make some further remarks to convince her, but thinking about the situation she was in, they forbore from doing so. Then remember this, wherever Granny is your home. Come back if you feel tired. Grandma Medicine heaved a sigh, stretched out her hands to hold hers and said with an affectionate look in her eyes. Touched, Yunwu nodded. I will. By the way, it suddenly occurred to me that during these days, though nobody came to our mansion to look for you, a lot of newcomers appeared in Luo City after you left. They came to our mansion intentionally or unintentionally, as if looking for someone. Outsiders? Then do you know who those people were? Yunwu looked at Cloud Murong. Cloud Murong frowned and then said in a quiet voice, I did some investigation into it but failed to find out. But there's some kind of relation between them and this auction house of Dragon Cabinet. They were related to this auction house of Dragon Cabinet. Yunwu was somewhat surprised by this answer. Cloud Murong told her that this Dragon Cabinet was a force to be reckoned with. It seemed to have secretly monopolized a lot of industries in 3 kingdoms. And the head of the Dragon Cabinet was called the most mysterious Young Master Long. Young Master Long. Yunwu's heart gave a lurch when she heard this title. That Long Qingxia had an air of wickedness about him, and he had never told her his identity. Was he by any chance this so-called Young Master Long? If that was really the case, wasn't he probably here as well? After leaving Cloud Murong's wing, Yunwu didn't return to Nangong Yi's wing but headed backstage. However, every section of this place was heavily guarded. She had just walked out of this area and hadn't approached the backstage part of this auction hall yet when a guard stopped her. Lady, this place is internal hall. You're not allowed to go inside. If there's anything I can do for you, just tell me directly. Surprisingly, this guard was very polite to Yunwu, who was common-looking and dressed in plain clothes. All people granted access to VIP area were from powerful background, so the guard didn't dare offend her. I want an audience with your chief or master. Are there any requirements? Yunwu asked directly. At this place, it was a waste of time to beat around the bush. As expected, on hearing her words, the guard glanced at Yunwu and kept silent for a second before politely answering, Sorry, lady. Our master never meet any outsiders, and our chief is on the auction platform. If you really want to meet our chief, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. On the auction platform? Was the chief that female named Ruoling? Yunwu briefly frowned. However, right at this moment, 2 figures walked down the spiral staircase in the front. One of the 2 was tall and wearing white clothes and a ghost-like mask covering one side of his face. His flowing black hair tumbled in a cascade down his shoulders, cloaking him in a shroud of mystery and devilishness. When he saw Yunwu stopped by the guard, he noticeably paused. When he suddenly stopped, Coldness Wu looked in the direction he was looking, and rested his eyes on Yunwu in plain clothes. After sizing her up, he found that she was merely a common woman and there was nothing special about her. Young Master Long, is she an acquaintance? Young Master Long withdrew his gaze. With a cold look in his dull gold eyes beneath the mask, he slightly curved his sexy lips of devilish charm. Master Wu, didn't you say that you wanted to find out how it feels to bid? This way, please. His voice was bland, magnetic, deep and a little hoarse. That was not the voice she was familiar with, but from the moment Yunwu saw him in white, her eyes had been fixed on him all along. That was him. It seemed as if she affirmed that he was that man of devilish charm on the sight of him. However, at this moment, he was black-haired, masked, with dull gold pupils and an air of apathy about him. This image was strange to her. On the sight of the 2 figures walking over, the 2 guards who stopped Yunwu bowed respectfully in unison, saying, Master. Master Wu. Hearing the 2 titles, Yunwu realized who he was. Young Master Long. He was really him. Yunwu watched him just like that. That, Young Master Long, with an air of iciness and strangeness about him, walked past her. It seemed as if he had never met her before. He didn't even look at her from the corners of his eyes. He really didn't recognize her. As she watched the 2 figures disappear at the end of the corridor, the look in Yunwu's black eyes grew deeper. Lady, if you'd like to meet our chief thank you. That won't be necessary. After saying this in a cold voice, Yunwu turned around and went back to the 3rd box. In the wing. Nangong Yi was still sitting in that seat. The white veil concealed his looks but couldn't conceal his temperament of mildness, grace and purity. When Yunwoo returned to the room, she faintly sensed that he raised his head and was looking at her with a mild smile. Is it done? There seemed to be several connotations in this remark. Yunwoo flicked him a glance, making no reply. Little Qing, seeing Yunwoo walking inside, sized her up. Confirming that there was no wound on her, he remarked sourly, "It seems that the Lord of Luo City is just another snob. He must have known you are a friend of my master's, which was why he let you get away with that." Saying this, he slightly raised his head, seeming complacent. The Yunwoo a while ago would definitely contradict him, which would make him blush furiously. But after entering the box, Yunwoo didn't seem in the mood for a verbal duel with him. She sat back into her previous seat and looked down into the hall. Unexpectedly, the two men that she had met a while ago were really sitting in the two seats close to the auction platform. "Hey, ugly woman, did the Lord of Luo City scare you so bad that you lost your sanity?" Little Qing, seeing Yunwoo was in an abnormal silence, couldn't help but look at her, a frown on his face. After hearing this, Yunwoo withdrew her gaze, flicked him a glance out of the corner of her eye and curved her lips in a smile. "If you care about me, you can just directly tell me. Tart words won't help. My comprehension is not very good, and I might misunderstand." Little Qing's face instantly went sulky as he heard her words. "Who cares about you? What a nerve. Humph." He snorted and twisted his head aside. Nangong Yi gave a chuckle and then commented in a mild and light voice, "Don't mind him. He's always been so childish. But, you went out a while ago. I suppose you've got that matter handled? If there anything I can do to help?" Yunwoo tossed a glance at him and lifted her brows. "You sound like you have an intimate knowledge of my business." Behind the white veil, a smile appeared on his divinely handsome face, and with that he replied gently, "Rest assured, I only know what I should know. As regards what I'm not supposed to know, I won't try to find out. Since destiny arranged a chance meeting between us, naturally we should be friends." What is he supposed to know? And what is he not supposed to know? Yunwoo didn't quite understand his words, but she felt that this son of the Grand Maester seemed to indeed have found out something about her. "You seem to be pretty fond of making friends with others." The day before, in the tavern in that border city, when she was disguised as a sickly child, he also made some similar remarks. Has he by any chance really seen past my disguise? She wondered. Destiny is at work in all favorable and unfavorable turns in people's lives. And some things have been written for a very long time. Nangong Yi's tone of voice was very bland, but his words were inscrutable. Written? Yunwoo glanced at the auction hall and lifted the corners of her mouth in a sneer. "Pity I never believe predestination. I only believe that my destiny is in my own hands, not those of divine providence. Right at this moment. All right. The auction of the last 3 treasures will start soon, which will be presided by Child Wu." A tender yet clear voice came from the auction platform. As Ruoling's died away, Coldness Wu in a purple robe rose from his seat in the front row, gave a smile and then walked to the platform at a gentle, elegant pace. All people sitting in the hall were somewhat confused, wondering why they suddenly changed the auctioneer. However, when their eyes fell on Coldness Wu, a lot of them seemed to recognize him. "Isn't that Counselor Wu serving the 7th prince?" "Yeah. Why is he on the platform acting as auctioneer of this auction of the Dragon Cabinet? Do you think there's some kind of relation between the 7th prince and the Dragon Cabinet? I mean, not everybody is eligible to stand on the auction platform of the Dragon Cabinet." "Tell me about it. This is really big news. If His Highness really cooperates with the Dragon Cabinet, then in the future." Coldness Wu on the platform seemed to have some time ago anticipated that those people sitting in the hall would react this way. He didn't really care about those lowered voices of discussion. It could even be said that that was exactly what he wanted. He had originally intended to pay a visit to Murong family this time, but the moment he'd entered the city, he had been informed that this was the day for this action House of the Dragon cabinet to open for business. What had been even more fortunate for him was that the moment he arrived at this place, he met young Master Long, the owner of the Dragon cabinet. This talk between the two of them hadn't been very fruitful, but this young Master Long didn't seem to be totally against the proposal. And he had even agreed to let him go up onto the platform to act as an auctioneer. Even if this young Master Long was to reject the proposal, since he had made his appearance on this auction platform, rumors about the cooperation between the Seventh Prince and the Dragon Cabinet would definitely still get abroad in a short time. In that case, His Highness should stand a better chance of being recalled to the Imperial Court. As long as His Highness returns to the capital city in an open and above-board fashion, things would be a lot easier, thought Coldness Wu. Ruo Ling, after a brief handover with him, left the auction platform. Master. Ruo Ling looked at the man sitting in a chair and made a deferential salutation to him. He was dressed entirely in white, half of his face covered in a mask, which made him seem both frosty and sinister. A man like this, though in disguise, was still losing seemingly deadly charm. Ruo Ling sat down beside him and leaned forward, reaching out her hands to pour him a cup of tea. Master, this is Longjing tea, your favorite. Her voice was tinged with tenderness. Young Master Long raised his eyes to glance at her, gave a tap on the surface of the table with his long fingers but didn't utter a word. Having been serving him for 10 years, Ruo Ling was fully aware of his habits. She put down the teacup, cast a disappointed look at him and also made no more remarks. However, not a single detail of this scene escaped the notice of Yun Wu in the third box on the second floor. She slightly knitted her thin eyebrows. It seems that that man has a lot of good fortune in love affairs. However, somehow, she inexplicably felt a brief twinge of jealousy. That man had glibly professed his feelings for her and promised to marry her, but never once had he mentioned anything to her about his family background. She was even unaware of anything about him except for his name. It turns out that behind this shroud of mystery about him hid such a beautiful woman. I thought that I'd learned my lesson after the betrayal in my last incarnation, but now. It's true what they say that crows are black the world over, and it's even truer that men are untrustworthy. Coldness glinted in Yun Wu's eyes as a sneer appeared at the corners of her mouth. Maybe even she herself was unaware that, surprisingly, her heart, which she believed to have long ago been hardened to romantic relationship, was filled with mixed feelings as she saw there was another woman beside that man. You know that man down there? At this time, a gentle and cultivated voice softly came. Yun Wu immediately dismissed those negative feelings from her heart. She slightly curved her rosy lips and replied with a faint smile, I'm just an ordinary woman. Who else could I possibly have acquaintance with in a place like this apart from you, son of the Grand Maester? Nangong Yi quietly looked at her. After quite a while, a chuckle seemed to escape his lips. Yun Wu flintily threw him a glance and queried, what's so funny? Little Qing also confusedly looked at his young master. Nothing. I just suddenly feel that you are quite cute. Nangong Yi's mild and cultured voice had just died away when little Qing almost failed to keep from bursting into wild laughter. Yun Wu, drinking tea, also nearly spurted out the tea in her mouth. Cute. This was possibly the first time that Yun Wu had ever heard anybody use this word on her during her last incarnation as well as this one. Moreover, how could he describe her as cute when she had disguised herself as a nondescript girl? There's definitely something wrong with his eyes. Yun Wu, who couldn't be bothered to argue with him, gave him a dirty look and then rested her eyes on the auction platform down below. As a result, she failed to notice the earnestness and amusement gleaming in Nangong Yi's wise bright eyes behind the white veil. Maybe nobody would ever know how he felt when his eyes were on her. Because there was no disguise, no matter how good it was, that he couldn't see through with his eyes. Right at this moment, the atmosphere in the auction hall became somewhat tense. There were even signs of activity in boxes of those noble families. It was noteworthy that after this round, the 3 lots left were no doubt all rare treasures. The last 3 lots to be auctioned next are the most precious treasures of this auction house, and I'll be an acting auctioneer hosting the auction of them. Coldness Wu made these remarks in a quite professional manner. The Wu family also owned some auction houses. As a young master of this family, though having been away from home for many years, he could perform the duty of an auctioneer with the greatest of ease. The first one is a bottle of saliva of a 1,000-year-old phoenix. The mild voice of Coldness Wu was heard distinctly by everybody present. Only when a phoenix lays eggs when its salivary gland secretes this kind of bodily fluid, a condensation of its vital essence. It has a super high level of toxicity, but the toxic substance in it is extractable and can be used to prepare the most potent poison. Most importantly, saliva of a 1,000-year-old phoenix can be refined and made into phoenix saliva pellet, which detoxifies any poison and possesses magic curative properties as well. Coldness Wu removed the piece of red cloth on the tray, revealing a transparent phial containing saliva of phoenix. Although the required skills of refining saliva of phoenix are specific to senior pharmacists, it is universally known that saliva of a 1,000-year-old phoenix is spiritual liquid, something that people can only come by with luck, not by searching for it. If someday one of your family members becomes a senior pharmacist, with a single droplet of this saliva, he or she would be able to prepare a phoenix saliva pellet, the efficacy of which all of you are fully aware of. Starting price of this bottle of saliva of a 1,000-year-old phoenix is 1.5 million taels of silver. Each bid should be no less than 500,000 taels higher than the previous one. The instant he finished the last word, a rather brittle voice was heard in the hall. 1.5 million. The bidder was that bony druggist. The intent look in his eyes was an unmistakable indication of his craving for the phoenix saliva and his determination to get it. After the bidding, he added, "This bottle of phoenix saliva is the very thing that the queen needs. If none of you are in urgent need of it, please allow me to have it." Previously, he had tried to browbeat other bidders by virtue of the majesty of the royal household but failed, and now, he directly assumed the authority of the queen. Everybody in the Zhou kingdom knew that the king favored the queen and had never spent a night with any concubine during the past over 10 years since the queen was selected, which showed how much weight the queen carried. However, what the skeletal druggist was unaware of was that eyes of Yun Wu, who had just heard that phoenix saliva could be used to prepare poison, went flinty as he added that remark. Poison. The queen needs this. It seemed that she had just found the source of the poison that had been inside her for over 10 years. The skinny druggist had just finished the last word when a frosty voice was heard. 5 million taels. 5 million taels. Everybody else was shocked and darted their eyes in the direction of the source of the voice. The bidder was nobody else but Yun Wu in the third box. This goddamn woman directly made a bid almost 4 times higher. Fuck. If the bidding keeps going this way, isn't the price for this bottle of phoenix saliva going to soar to a sky-high level in just a few moments? Everybody's brow corrugated in a frown. The skinny druggist's face instantly went sepulchral and his angry eyes darted towards the third box on the second floor. However, at this time, an old voice came from a wing room on the other side. 5 million taels. There was no other bids after that. People beginning to think that that woman had decided to quit bidding after realizing the overwhelming odds against her. However, right after that bony druggist made a bid of 6 million taels of silver, Yun Wu's cold voice came once again. 8 million. Yun Wu didn't really have a clear idea of how much money that was. Those treasures in her storage space were from the royal palace anyway, and she could always pay another visit to it after she spent all of them. She had heard that there were 12 treasure houses in the royal palace. With the resources of the royal household, the queen had built an assassin organization called the Dragon Clan, members of which had been hotly pursuing Yun Wu with the intention to kill her. The queen had also been using poison on her for over 10 years. As a result, Yun Wu believed she might as well steal the money and squander it. In fact, there was phoenix saliva right inside her storage space and she didn't need this bottle of phoenix saliva at all. But the more the queen wanted this thing, the harder she would try to make sure the queen didn't get it. Through clenched teeth the skeletal druggist made another bid. 9 million. 10. Her bland voice sounded so languid. On hearing this, the skinny druggist was almost reduced to vomiting blood with fury, his murderous eyes widened glaring at number 3 box. She's working against me. He had originally expected that he would definitely be able to get this bottle of phoenix saliva with 7 or 8 million taels at the most, but after Yunwoo made this bid, the price of it had exceeded his budget. Miss, may I ask why on earth are you so insistent on making things difficult for me? The skinny druggist glared at number 3 box. Probably anybody in the hall could tell that there was thinly disguised murderousness mixed with rage in his eyes. Yunwoo gave a languid smile and replied casually, like I said, bidding against the royal household is my only hobby. On hearing this, people in the hall complained under their breath, you guys may bid against each other all you want, but why did you instantly hike up the price to 10 million? There are another 2 treasures to be auctioned. You are messing around with the market price. Fortunately, in this kind of atmosphere, that somewhat old voice that had made a bid a while ago came from the wing room next door once again. 5 million. After hearing this, Yunwoo in her box had no intention to make another bid. That bony druggist, a scarlet blush on his cheeks and neck, fists clenched, fixed number 3 box with a glare, the look in his eyes heavy with murderousness. You'll regret this. Having no other choice, the druggist slumped down in his seat after making this remark of bluster through gritted teeth. He had only brought 10,000 taels. Originally he had been absolutely positive that with the status of the royal household and the influence of the queen, he would be able to get the bottle of saliva of a 1,000-year-old phoenix at a price no higher than 5 million. But unexpectedly, because of the woman in that wing room, all his bids for lots that took his fancy had failed. He found it impossible to swallow all this. Young Master Long sitting in the front unnoticeably twisted his head aside and flicked a glance at the bony druggist several rows away from him, his eyes slightly squinted as a flicker flashed across his golden pupils. Eventually, the bottle of saliva of a 1,000-year-old phoenix went to the highest bidder who was in number 2 wing room. In number 3 wing room, Yunwoo cavalierly took a sip of her tea, a calm and bland expression on her face, showing a total disregard for the threatening words of the skinny druggist. None of her reactions had escaped Nan Gongyi's notice, who had been smiling all along. You've been staring at me for such a long time. Have you seen enough? Yunwoo put down her teacup and twisted her head aside to look at Nan Gongyi wearing a veil hat. Nan Gongyi replied with a gentle and cultivated smile, if it bothers you, miss, I'll try looking at you less often. Yunwoo fell speechless. Is this son of the Grand Maester soft in the head? She wondered. Though unable to see his face, she could feel that this man had been gazing at her with a goofy smile all along. This made her skin prickle with apprehension. Young master, this ugly woman doesn't even worth a glance. If anybody in this place is worth looking at, it would be that female auctioneer down there. She's far prettier. Little Qing, though still young, affected a sophistication he didn't possess and pointed at the female sitting beside masked young Master Long, whose name was Ruoling, pretty. Yunwoo drinking tea briefly paused and subconsciously tossed a glance at the female in the hall down below. Little Qing, you really think that woman is very pretty? Yunwoo twisted her head aside and looked at little Qing, slightly lifting the corners of her mouth. Of course. Any man with eyes would regard her as a beauty. You may ask my young master if you don't believe me, replied little Qing earnestly. Yunwoo didn't ask Nan Gongyi, for she didn't really need anybody to tell her the answer. With a somewhat flinty expression in her eyes, she quietly threw another downward glance at the man sitting in the hall, who dressed entirely in white and was wearing a mask, and who so far had never once turned his head around. She's indeed pretty good-looking. Do all men like young beautiful women? Yunwoo seemed to be talking to herself but also seemed to be asking someone. In her last incarnation, to rescue the man for whom she had been willing to sacrifice everything, she had lost half of her face in an explosion. That man had repeatedly assured her that he didn't mind, but in the end, he'd still betrayed her. Exactly what do promises and vows mean to a man? She wondered. Nan Gongyi didn't answer, but a hint of sympathy faintly gleamed in his eyes as he watched hers. Little Qing, a young boy who had always been straightforward, remarked with bluntness typical of children, certainly. All men like beautiful women. But given your appearance and your unpleasant way of speaking, I'm quite sure no man will like you. After hearing this, Yunwu curled up the corner of her mouth, but the smile on her face was faint and she made no reply. She picked up her teacup, slowly took another sip of tea, and that languid bland expression reappeared on her face. Her mien made her seem somewhat impenetrable. After staring at her for quite a while, little Qing furrowed his brow. He wanted to tell her that actually she wasn't really that repulsive, but eventually, feeling too embarrassed to do that, he didn't say anything. Afterwards, the last lot of this auction sale, which was the most precious, went to the one with an old voice in number 2 wing room, who made the winning bid of 38 million. Since that skinny druggist didn't bid for that lot and Yunwu was uninterested in it, so she stayed out of the bidding. Nan Gongyi looked at Yunwu, who was still sitting on the chair, and asked in a gentle and cultivated manner, "We're going back to the capital city. Would you like to come along, miss?" "If you're going our way, of course." Yunwu put down her teacup, raised her eyes and glanced at him. After a few moments' silence, she responded with a bland smile, "I have something to attend to." "You may leave first, child Nan Gong." Nan Gongyi cast a look at her, curled up the corners of his mouth and inclined his head. "Take care of yourself, Mississippi." As his gentle voice died away, he turned around and left with little Qing. His flying white veil and fluttering hemlines made a beautiful scene of his receding figure. To be honest, this Nan Gongyi guy seems gentle, elegant and poised, but many of his remarks were quite inscrutable. Did he really see through my disguise? Yunwu wouldn't get the answer to this question anytime soon, but she was fully aware of what she should do next. She rose to her feet and with a flicker of her figure turned into a rapid blur of movement and disappeared from the wing room almost in the blink of an eye. In the back hall of the auction house, all guards and staff members were instructed to leave. Coldness Wu was just about to say his farewells to young Master Long sitting in the host seat, planning to return and report to the 7th prince. Ruoling was personally attending to all the needs of young Master Long, refilling his teacup included. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that that girl named Ruoling had feelings for that man people called young Master Long. You are in the enviable position of having such a beautiful and competent assistant as Ruoling. I promise I'll tell the 7th prince your needs after returning. Young Master Long hopefully will reach an agreement of cooperation the next time we meet. Now I'll leave you to your business. See you around. Before Coldness Wu's voice died away, a gust of wind blew by. Who is it? Coldness Wu's face instantly went vigilant and he abruptly mobilized his Tier 7 fighting spirit. Ruoling immediately reacted. She whipped out the soft sword wrapped around her waist and unhesitatingly launched an attack on the person who had suddenly come at young Master Long. However, thud. Young Master Long, a grand kung fu master, waved his hand and directly threw Ruoling aside with his potent qi. She violently impacted on the chairs and tables on the side with a loud bang. Ruoling was blindsided by this sudden change, and even Coldness Wu, who was about to make his move to help, was dumbfounded. Young Master Long, facing the frontal stab, sinisterly curled up the corner of his tightly closed mouth. Sitting on the chair, he dodged the sharp sword aimed at his arm with a weird movement of his upper body and intercepted the assailant's right hand, coming at him in a sideways hack. It's been such a long time since we last met, yet you want to kill your husband to be on sight? His low deep magnetic voice softly came, which could only be heard by the two of them. On hearing this, Yunwu curled up the corner of her mouth. It seems that you still remember, but... A flicker of flintiness crossed the depths of her eyes. This time around I'm not here to talk with you about the old days. I came to borrow some of your blood. The next second after she finished the last word, the dagger in her left hand flashed across his elbow like greased lightning. But the dagger missed its target. The man stretched his arm and instantly drew her into his embrace. That's very easy. I'll have it delivered to you. All you have to do is give the word. Being held tightly by him, Yunwoo furrowed her brow and struggled but failed to free herself. Then she twisted her head around and looked at the man's demonic golden eyes. You have a pretty glib tongue. Let go of me. Having no intention of being ungentlemanly, young Master Long released her immediately. Yunwoo quickly took a step away from him and directly tossed him the dagger in her left hand. You said it yourself. Do it quick. The man cast a deep look at her with his golden eyes and curled up the corner of his mouth in a smile, a wicked, sullen and aggressive gleam in his eyes. You seem pretty anxious. Are you going together with that son of the Grand Maester, by any chance? Yunwoo made no reply, eyeing him with arms crossed across her chest. Seeing this, the man slightly squinted his golden eyes, which made him seem a trifle dangerous. But as he saw that the woman remained indifferent and was still nonchalantly gazing at him, the anomalous expression in his eyes disappeared and he slightly curled up the corner of his mouth. In the presence of her, with the dagger in his hand, he slit the palm of his other hand. Red blood instantly oozed out of the wound. It was not until the small jade phial was almost half full that he withdrew his hand, sealed the phial and handed it to her. Yunwoo stepped forward, reached out her hand and took the jade phial, planning to turn around and leave. But he grabbed her hand when she took the jade phial. You're leaving just like this? Yunwoo raised her eyes to look at his and replied with a spurious smile, thanks. Now can you please release my hand? This woman knew very well that this was not what he meant. But in front of these outsiders, he didn't really take any other action but just released her hand. Wait for me outside. I'll go and find you after everything's handled. A low voice came into her ears. Yunwoo glanced at him, turned around and walked towards the outside without making a response. However, as she turned around, her eyes met those of Ruo Ling, who had just picked herself up and had a mixed expression and a frown on her face. It's you. The moment Ruo Ling saw Yunwoo's face, she instantly recognized her. She's the woman who was stopped by guards at the doorway of this auction house previously. How come a plain-looking woman like her knows my master? Just now, on this woman's account, master even. Yunwoo flicked a glance at her, coldly curled up the corner of her mouth, nimbly turned around and walked away. Coldness Wu standing on the other side watched as she left. Naturally, he also recognized her. She was the woman for whom young Master Long had paused in the wing room area on the second floor. It's just that at that time young Master Long didn't seem to know her at all, but now it seems that not only do the two of them know each other, their relationship is quite. Exactly who is that woman? Why was young Master Long willing to slit his hand and gave her his blood? He wondered. After leaving the auction house of Dragon Cabinet, Yunwoo had originally wanted to find somewhere to get a horse-drawn carriage and then disguise herself and return to the capital city. But shortly after walking outside, she sensed that some people were tailing her. She had a shrewd idea of who these people were. Yunwoo coldly curled up the corner of her mouth and changed her direction, heading for the suburbs. After 2 hours. In a secluded spot of the western suburbs, those following in Yunwoo's wake seemed to finally run out of patience. 5 tough hombres rapidly rushed forward and surrounded her. You goddamn women are pretty good at anti-tracking. You think you can get rid of us with those winding streets? We are local gangsters in this city. It's so foolish of you to try to best us with this trick. That's enough. Cut the nonsense. Lord Lu said he didn't want her captured. He wants her dead. Let's do it. The 5 fierce husky men immediately whipped out their sabers and closed in on Yunwoo. You, woman, be smart and surrender yourself, and we'll give you a painless death. Otherwise, we may have to take your mangled body back to report on the fulfillment of our duty, remarked one of the strong men in a gruff voice. This guy's pretty cocky. Yunwoo watched the 5 tough hombres gaining ground on her step by step. There was no fear in her eyes. Instead, a flicker of somewhat icy look crossed them. If it's your boss, Lord Lu, who wants me dead, why is he not here? Another strong man gave a sneer and replied contemptuously, because it's totally unnecessary for Lord Lu to come here personally. You are just a woman. Even we won't be able to have enough fun before you die. Tell me about it. I can't believe they sent 5 of us here to kill you. It's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. All 5 of them eyed Yunwoo with ill-concealed scorn. Is that so? Indeed, it's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, responded Yunwoo, curling up the corner of her mouth. However, by sledgehammer, she was referring to not them but herself. Though all these 5 men were of a stocky and imposing build, they were merely warriors at around tier 3. It's pretty sensible of you to know that you're far from a match for us. Because of this, I'm going to make it quick and painless for you. Immediately after finishing the last word, one of the tough hombres enveloped himself in tier 3 fighting spirit and slashed squarely at Yunwoo with his saber. Such was the ferocity of the blow that it threatened to have the target. The other 4 men didn't make their moves, and in their eyes they wouldn't need to. All of them believed that one man was more than enough to handle a woman who lacked the strength to truss up a chicken. However, the next second, the 4 of them were stunned. As brooding gleam flashed across eyes of the 4 of them, blood was spattered all around. The man was still holding his saber in a posture of giving a downward slash. But his head left his neck and thudded to the ground, and with that blood spewed from the wound in all directions and splattered across the front of the clothes of the 2 men on the side. What's going on? The 4 men still hadn't realized what had just happened. Even the victim was unaware at the instant when his head parted from his neck. That speed was very fast, so fast that people couldn't quite believe its existence. You did that. The strong-built man on the right side, eyes full of rage, glared at Yunwoo, who seemed to haven't even moved an inch. Because of his position, he happened to have seen all her movements. It was just that he was somewhat dismayed and also a trifle afraid. Because he saw her movements but failed to distinguish her weapon. This woman didn't even use her fighting spirit just now, and they couldn't discern which level she was at. This was the most alarming part. Yunwoo leisurely lifted her eyebrows and said with a smile, since he wanted to make it quick, the death I gave him was the quickest. He didn't even have the time to feel any pain before dying. It's a pretty good choice. He chose it. What about you? Which one will you choose? These words were very arrogant but also heavy with bloodthirstiness. The other 3 stalwart men, seeing how their companion had just ended up, collected their thoughts and instantly emanated a furious and murderous air. How dare you kill our companion? You are dead meat. Eyes rounded with rage, the 3 men immediately wielded their sabers and rapidly launched an attack on Yunwoo from 3 different directions. But all their blows hit nothing, and there was no sound of blades cutting into flesh. As the 3 of them saw that the figure they just slashed at twisted and vanished from view, a flicker of astonishment crossed the depths of their eyes. A blur of movement? That's a blur of movement. That woman looks every inch a common person, and there's no signs of fighting spirit of any form on her. How is it possible that? Having never sensed any undulation of powers from Yunwoo had been the very reason why the 5 of them had believed that she was a woman who didn't even have enough strength to truss up a chicken. Since you have such a strong death wish, I'll do you a favor. An icy voice softly came into ears of the 3 of them. The 3 of them furrowed their brows and almost subconsciously turned leftward at the same time and gave a slash. With a change of his countenance, the man who was the only one that had been watching on the side yelled, "Stop!" But the saber of one of them had hit his companion's back. Fuck! Why did you hack me? But before the pained shout of the man died away, a fountain of blood spewed out of his throat. At this moment, the other 3 finally discerned what her so-called weapon was. It was a flake of transparent crystal. That flask had been among the pile of shiny female knickknacks that a vendor had been selling on a street that they had walked through not long ago. The 5 of them had seen Yunwoo picking for a while but hadn't paid any special attention. But she had killed 2 of their companions with a small flake like that? Without using any fighting spirit, she had separated a man's head from his neck and killed 2 men in just a few moments. The 3 of them would be fools if they still couldn't sense danger after all this. Retreat. Immediately after one of them gave an order in a gruff voice, the 3 of them immediately turned around to make their escape. Yunwoo wasn't really interested in these underlings. It was that skinny druggist that she was really interested in. And it would definitely be a waste of time if she didn't lure out the mastermind, given that he was the one who'd offered her this lead and it had taken her 2 hours to get to this out-of-the-way spot. The corners of Yunwoo's mouth curled at the sight of the 3 men making their escape. With a swift movement of her feet, she turned into a blur. Now that you've already come, this is where you meet your end. Yunwoo's cold voice had just died away when a wicked gleam flashed through the air and a wind blade slit a man's face. The pain in his cheek and the smell of blood brought a noticeable change of the man's countenance, and with that he quickened his pace. It was obvious that that woman was nondescript and harmless looking, but at this moment, all 3 of them were consumed with a mixture of intense tension and deep fear. They felt as though their lives could be taken at any moment. Puff! Inexplicably, a bloody slit appeared in the throat of the man bringing up the rear. What with the overstrenuous running and his nerves, the man's blood pressure was high, and the moment his main artery was cut off, blood spurted out and was spattered over the back of the man ahead of him. That man turned and saw the blood spewing from the wound in his companion's neck and instantaneously felt a cold sensation in his own neck, a stab of horror clutching at his heart. "Chief, signal for help." On hearing this, the man fleeing in front hastily fished a thin bamboo tube out of his belt, pulled a string attached to it, and a signal flare instantly shot up into the sky. This was just the thing Yunwoo had been waiting for. They had done what she expected them to do, so naturally their lives were of no use to her now. With a flip of her hand, a dagger was produced out of thin air, and at the same time her figure spurted forward in a weird fashion. Swish! Swish! 2 wicked gleams were seen and Yunwoo stopped. The 2 men running for their lives also abruptly came to a halt. The last expression in their eyes was dismay. Tier 7. That woman was a Tier 7 warrior. Both the 2 of them distinctly felt it right at that moment. However, that was their last feeling. Thud! Thud! 2 corpses fell straight to the ground, motionless. In a residence in the city. The skeletal druggist was leisurely sipping at his tea, waiting for good news to come. "Lord Liu," they sent a message back. At this time, an plainly clothed attendant ran through the door into the room in a great haste. The druggist, whose name was Lu Sen, sneered in a sinister voice, "The 5 are bringing that woman's body back, aren't they?" But the attendant hurriedly shook his head. "No, Lord Liu. The 5 sent out an SOS. His hand holding the teacup abruptly paused and Lu Sen lifted his eyes, which were glinting horrifiedly. "What? An SOS?" "Yes. It was an urgent SOS. Lord Liu, am I to send them back up?" asked the attendant respectfully. Clink. The teacup was heavily put down onto the table, tea splattering around. Lu Sen's face took on a scowl. A bunch of good-for-nothings. They outnumber that woman 5 to 1, yet they had the nerve to ask for help. He'd had Yunwoo's background ascertained some time ago. Although the 3rd box had been occupied by son of the Grand Maester, Nangong Yi had just made the acquaintance of the woman who'd outbid him in the doorway of the auction house. There were no other links between the 2 of them. Nangong Yi had left with his young attendant immediately after the auction. The 5 should be more than enough to handle an ordinary woman. But the 5 had sent out an SOS. Hadn't they been trying to inflict a humiliation on him? "Go and summon every man we've got. I'm going there personally to find out how tough that woman is exactly. However, when Lu Sen, along with a large group of his subordinates, reached the spot in the suburb where the SOS had been sent, nobody was there to be seen. Where is she? Lu Sen's sinister eyes glanced around the place. It was a remote backwater covered with wild grass. There were woods and slopes, and the terrain was rather rugged. A guard beside him said, "Lord Lu, this is indeed the area where the SOS was sent. How about you stay here and have some rest and I take some men and search this place? Maybe we could find some traces." After saying this, Lu Sen waved his hand and uttered, in agreement. Before long, all his subordinates fanned out to conduct a search except for 2 kung fu experts. The large group of men had just left when a half-chuckle suddenly came from somewhere. "I was wondering who Lord Lu is, and now it turns out to be you, a stingy lackey of the royal household. Who's talking? Stop hiding and show yourself." The 2 guards beside Lu Sen, both of whom were warriors in late stage of Tier 6, abruptly mobilized their fighting spirit. "Aren't I right here?" a voice chuckled. They twisted their heads aside and saw that Yun Wu was leisurely sitting on a boulder not far away to their left, a green bristlegrass clenched between her teeth. Since when had she been sitting there? They were positive that just now there hadn't been anybody on the boulder, and they hadn't felt anybody's chi approach either. How had she? The 2 guards were instantly tensed up, each of them taking a step forward to put Lu Sen behind them under their protection. However, Lu Sen, at the sight of Yun Wu, recalled what had happened during the auction earlier this day, his face momentarily going sepulchral. "So it was you that was working against me all the time in the auction?" Yun Wu swiveled her head aside, her eyes glinting coldly. "You tell me." Clenching his teeth in fury, Lu Sen ordered menacingly, "What are you 2 standing there for? Bring me her head immediately. I'll hack her to pieces." Though not a senior pharmacist, he was a royal druggist designated to prepare drugs for the queen. He was always respected and hardly anybody dared mess with him. But this woman had not only humiliated and enraged him but also outbid him for all the lots he wanted. The queen would almost certainly give him a hard time when she saw him return empty-handed. And it was all because of this woman. He would never be able to find another way to vent his anger other than cutting this woman to pieces. As he gave the order, his 2 guards immediately started emanating a murderous air. The sound of blades rubbing against sheaths was heard. The 2 guards whipped out their sabers at the same time and, with a wicked gleam, both ferociously swung their weapons at Yun Wu. Their attack was utterly ruthless. Both of them were warriors in late stage of Tier 6 and either of these 2 slashes was powerful enough to have Yun Wu in a flash. An icy expression flitted across the depths of Yun Wu's eyes. They wanted to cut her to pieces, and she also intended to take their lives, but if she fought them at this place, the noises would attract the attention of the large group of their helpers and she'd be in big trouble. Yun Wu suddenly recalled a suitable place, the corners of her mouth curling. The next second, with a flicker of her figure, she sidestepped their attack like a swift snake. The 2 guards' sabers hit the boulder, instantaneously split it into several blocks. "You outnumber me 2 to 1. Shame on you. I'm not fighting this unfair fight." The moment she finished the last word, Yun Wu spun around and rushed forward, as though fleeing. "You good-for-nothings couldn't even handle a woman. What are you standing there for? Go get her," bellowed Lu Sen, glaring at Yun Wu's receding back, teeth gritted. The 2 guards were rather depressed but still hastened to pursue the target. Lu Sen, so anxious to personally cut Yun Wu to pieces that he was grinding his teeth, mobilized his Tier 4 fighting spirit and followed them. In the blink of an eye, 4 figures disappeared from the rugged mountain path. The farther they went, the rougher the path was. They found themselves approaching a trackless valley. On the surface, Yun Wu was aimlessly running for her life. Spirits of her 3 pursuers were getting higher, because the valley ahead was a dead end. "The path ends in that valley. Where are you going to flee now?" Lu Sen's sinister, menacing laugh came from behind. "Flee? For what reason did he think she'd come here if not to lure him away from his men? Yunwoo kept rushing forward, emanating an almost palpable murderous air. The streaking figure ahead abruptly flickered and put on such a spurt that it actually blurred, as though she was about to get out of their sight. Naturally, the two guards chasing her also speeded up in an effort to catch up with her. But on entry into that valley, the two guards suddenly had an inkling that something was wrong. Because there was a deathly hush in this place. A sense of grave danger rose inside the two of them instinctively. Watch out! Out of the corners of his eyes, one of the guards saw a wicked gleam shooting over from the side. Alarmed, he hastily gave his companion a word of warning. Puff! But he had just finished the last word of the warning when that dagger that had appeared out of thin air penetrated his companion's throat. Sensing that blade coming at him, the other guard hurriedly dodged aside. As he collected himself, his eyes noticed that the woman they'd been pursuing for quite some time was unhurriedly standing on a boulder not far away. She was slowly wiping off the blood on her dagger with a white handkerchief, a cold faint smile at the corners of her mouth. It's pretty persevering of you guys to have pursued me for such a long time, which makes me feel obliged to help you meet your ends. It was you who killed him just now. That guard was enraged but at the same time startled. His companion had been at the late stage of Tier 6. This nondescript woman seemed to be in her early 20s at the most, but she had actually managed to take the life of a warrior at the late stage of Tier 6? Yunwoo raised her eyes to look at him and gave a seemingly innocent smile. I'm not really a big fan of gory scenes, but as I've already promised you guys that I'd help you meet your ends, I think I'll have to put up with it. At this time, Lu Sin arrived, somewhat out of breath. Seeing the guard lying prone on a boulder and wondering the reason, he frowned and reprimanded, "What the heck are you lying there for? Get up and bring me that woman's head right now." He impatiently aimed a kick at that guard. But suddenly, out of the corners of his eyes, he caught sight of the pool of blood beside the boulder and walked up to check. Eyes abruptly widening, he swiveled his head around to look at the guard on the other side. What happened here? The guard, gripping the hilt of his saber, felt a surge of anger and glared at Yunwoo. Lord Lu, it was this woman who killed him. You need to be careful. It was her who'd killed him. Lu Sen's immediate reaction at these words was one of disbelief. Both these two kung fu experts were warriors at the late stage of Tier 6. How was it possible that that woman was capable of killing either of them? However, there was nobody else around. If it weren't her who'd killed him, who else could it be? Lu Sen lifted his eyes to fix Yunwoo with a venomous, furious stare. Go! Do whatever you can to kill her. On hearing the order, that guard took a flying leap and launched an attack on Yunwoo swiftly and ferociously, his saber imbued with his fighting spirit. Swish! The sharp sound of the blade cutting through the air was heard. With a sneer at the corners of her mouths, Yunwoo swiftly sidestepped and at the same time flipped her right palm, and with that a big knife materialized in it. Magenta fighting spirit instantly burst out of her body, her palpable Tier 7 middle stage chi spreading outward as she swung the big knife at the target. Blood splattered in all directions as the blade hit the man with a menacing gleam. The guard's face clouded over with horror, which his eyes were also full of. Middle stage of Tier 7. This woman was actually in middle stage of Tier 7. No wonder. No wonder the 5 sent before them had put out a signal for help. However, when he realized this, it was already too late. With a puff, his body was halved and fell to the ground. She cut the guard in half with a single saber slash. Middle stage of Tier 7. Lu Sen's eyes abruptly dilated with terror, staring at Yunwoo, feeling as though an intangible fist had clenched heavily around his heart, almost reducing it to cardiac arrest. At this moment, the only thought he had in mind was that he needed to flee immediately. However, he felt a mixture of pain and numbness in his legs. He lowered his head only to see a silver needle sticking in each of his shanks. The silver needles were poisoned. A rigid sensation caused by the mixture of numbness and pain began to spread upward bit by bit from his legs where the needles were, until his whole legs were dead stiff, immobilizing him completely. You. Let me tell you something. My men are all over this place. If I yell for help, you won't be able to make it out of here alive. Lu Sen glared at her, teeth gritted. However, right at this time, maybe because of the smell of blood in the air, hisses that made people's flesh creep issued from the cracks in rocks around the scene. Before long, countless small crimson snakes slithered out of the cracks. In the blink of an eye, the ground was carpeted with snakes. This kind of crimson snakes were just low-level magic creatures. They were small in size, but every inch of their skin was no less noxious than the venom of a cobra. Also, this kind of snakes were particularly sensitive to blood. Therefore, at the smell of blood, these snakes had slithered out of the cracks, heading squarely towards the bodies of the two guards. One after another, the snakes wormed their way into the corpses through the wounds. Standing not far away, hearing the hisses and sounds of sucking blood, Lu Sen felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end, his countenance changing drastically at the scene. But he was a druggist after all, so he naturally carried plenty of medications with him as a precaution. Though his legs were stiff, he could still move his hands. He fished a phial of sulfur powder out of his storage ring, scattered it in a circle around himself, then took an alexipharmic pill from the storage ring and swallowed it. It was only then that he let out a sigh of relief. Yunwoo watched a couple of crimson snakes crawling onto her big bloody knife to suck the blood, not a shred of fear on her face. Instead of shaking the snakes off, she rested her hand on top of the hilt of the knife and slowly raised her head to look at Lu Sen, who appeared relieved. Lord Lu, I heard that you concocted a lot of poisons with extremely yin properties for the queen. I wonder if you could spare a bottle or two for me to let me have some fun with it. On hearing this, Lu Sen furrowed his brows and looked in the direction of Yunwoo. How did you come to know that? He had barely finished the last word when he stopped himself, annoyance glinting in the depths of his eyes. He was indeed a druggist working for the queen, but everybody believed that what he prepared for the queen was just skincare medications. His real duty had never come to the knowledge of a third person. How on earth had this woman found out that what he'd been concocting for the queen was actually poisons with extremely yin properties? Who are you exactly? Lu Sen narrowed his eyes sinisterly. Yunwoo inwardly snorted coldly. She'd guessed right. It doesn't matter much who I am. But I get this feeling that you don't really like the idea of sparing some for me, Lord Lu. At this time, a languid smile curled the corners of Yunwoo's mouth, but in the depths of her eyes glinted iciness. Since you are unwilling, Lord Lu, I'll spare part of my favorite for you to let you have some enjoyable moments. When the words had left her, Yunwoo stepped down the rock, heedless of the crimson snakes on the ground. However, oddly enough, as Yunwoo progressed, those snakes in front of her hastily parted to allow her through, hissing constantly. Beneath Lu Sen's slightly surprised gaze, Yunwoo walked up to him at a gentle pace. With a flick of her wrist, a small phial materialized on her white-skinned palm in the presence of Lu Sr. You have a storage space as well? At the sight of this, a look of astonishment mixed with greed abruptly flashed across the depths of his sinister eyes. His storage space was attached to a ring, and it was almost filled to capacity. It surprised him that this woman also owned a storage space. If he could make it his own. While avarice was building up in Lu Sen, Yunwoo had removed the stopper of the jade phial already. A queer scent wafted out of the phial, and with that Lu Sen's countenance instantly changed drastically. Mandala. You're actually going to use mandala here. Do you have a death wish? Mandala was a kind of rather rare poisonous flower which could also be used to prepare potions with healing power. But that was not the point. The point was that the smell of blood accepted, the aroma of mandala was these crimson snakes' favorite. The combination of the fragrance of mandala and the smell of blood would make these crimson snakes become crazily bloodthirsty. Seeing as right now this place was swarming with crimson snakes, wasn't this woman trying to get herself killed by opening a phial of mandala at this point in time? The carpet of snakes were thrilled at the scent of mandala as though they'd just been injected with steroid. Hissing and flicking their tongues with their thin fangs bared, they encircled both Yunwu and Lu Senator. It seemed that they would be launching themselves at the two of them at any moment. Beads of cold sweat oozing out of his forehead, Lu Sen glanced at the growing number of snakes around him out of the corners of his eyes. What the hell do you want? Yunwu faintly smiled. Like I said, I want 2 bottles of that poison you concocted that is of extremely mean property. Frowning, Lu Sen looked at Yunwu. What do you want it for? For fun. Yunwu stared flintily at him, an icy sneer at the corners of her mouth. For fun. What was the problem with this woman? Had she any idea how long it'd take him or how many precious herbs and messenger drugs it required to concoct enough of that poison to fill a small phial? And she said she wanted 2 bottles of it to have fun, as though it were water she was asking for. So what's your answer, Lord Lu? While asking this question, Yunwu slowly moved the jade phial closer to him in a seemingly nonchalant manner, as if intending to pour the phial of mandala over him. Lu Sen's sunken face couldn't be more sepulchral. Since you're aware I've been concocting poisons with extremely mean properties, you should know that it is the queen that I'm serving. Have you considered the consequences for threatening me like this? The last remark sent Yunwu into a fit of laughter which made Lu Sen's flesh creep. The next moment, her hand quivered and the poison inside the jade phial spattered across his shoulder. Taken aback, Lu Sen hurriedly raised his hands and tried to take off his robe. Looking at him with a regretful face, Yunwu said, I was so careless. What with a lapse of concentration, the whole phial of it was now on your robe. It's such a waste. Beside himself with anger, Lu Sen glared at her, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. You did it intentionally. Lu Sen glowered at Yunwu, fury smoldering in his eyes, only too anxious to tear her apart with his bare hands. He was inwardly swearing that after he got out of this place, he would catch her and slowly torture her to death with all the methods he knew, inflicting pain so unbearable that she would beg him to kill her. A sneer lifted a corner of Yunwu's lips. You're right about one thing. Originally, had you not mentioned you served the queen, I might have given you a quick death. Now. TSK. It's such a shame my precious was wasted this way. Her precious. Lu Sen furrowed his brows, a flicker of incredulity crossing the depths of his sinister eyes. Suddenly, a wicked gleam rapidly fell across his face. Swish. Arg. A pained cry like that of a pig being slaughtered instantly resounded through the whole valley. At a wave of her hand, a bloody middle finger with a storage ring around it was magic to her palm. The next second, with a flicker of her figure, Yunwu had landed on a boulder in the distance. Lu Sen, pallid-faced, was holding his profusely bleeding left hand with all his might, a mixture of resentment and extreme fury in his eyes which were glowering at Yunwu. Give me my finger and storage ring back, or else I swear to God I'll inflict such torture on you that you'll wish you could die of it. A mysterious sneer curled the corners of Yunwu's mouth, and then with a shadow of a smile, she looked at him and said, Oh, that sounds so scary, Lord Lu. However, the expression in her eyes inexplicably made Lu Sen's skin crawl. Lu Sen was beside himself with rage, but suddenly some kind of sound was distinctly heard. Hiss, hiss, countless snakes, like a swarm of bees, were hissing at his feet. Lu Sen looked down and his eyes abruptly dilated. Arg! An anguished screech of horror rent the air. He didn't know when, but his numb, stiff legs had been covered with numerous crimson snakes, which were now gnawing their way into his body. Lu Sen tried to shield himself with his Tier 4 fighting spirit to defend against the snakes, but the moment he mobilized his chi, a numb sensation spread through his whole body, rendering him stiff. Was this some kind of poison? He was sure that just now he had swallowed a pill that could detoxify any poison. How was it possible that the poison from the silver needles was still acting on him? But right now he had no room in his head to give this matter any more thought, because he could feel those crimson snakes excitedly worming their way around in his flesh, causing him such unbearable agony that droplets of cold sweat was welling up on his skinny, ghastly white face. "Help me. Please help me. I'll give you whatever you argh." However, before he could finish his cry for help, the crimson snakes overwhelmed his whole numb stiff body. He had just finished half of his despairing scream when some snakes burrowed into his throat and silenced him. Hiss, hiss, zih, zih, the sounds of snakes gnawing his body were blood-curdling. Soon the rank scent of blood pervaded the whole place. Yun-woo, who had been icily watching this scene all along, curled up the corners of her mouth in a sneer as a bloodthirsty look flitted across the depths of her eyes. She had already got what she wanted. What use could she possibly have for him? But people like him who wanted her dead always had to pay the price. However, right at this moment, Yun-woo's countenance suddenly changed. She jerked her head up to look in a direction and saw that two black figures in mid-air were rapidly approaching. The two people were none other than the two grand assassins that had been hunting her since she'd left the Lien village that day. Damn it! She had originally thought that she'd got rid of them in that border city, but unexpectedly, they had actually tracked her down to this place. Yun-woo enwrapped herself with wind element and, with a flicker of her figure, started to make her escape. Whiz! Whiz! Countless darts were shot down at her from mid-air with menacing gleams. Caught unawares, Yun-woo had no choice but to quickly cartwheel several times to dodge. "Where do you think you're going?" A fierce, murderous voice came from the sky in the distance. In the blink of an eye, the two grand assassins had swished down to the ground, standing not far away from Yun-woo, one of them ahead of her and the other behind her. "You're pretty smart, girl. I'll give you that. You actually lost us by disguising yourself. Unfortunately for you, no matter how good at hiding you are, once you utilize your powers, this jade token will sense it immediately without fail." 19 Cold Kill Mouse Sun Stare at Cloud Dance, Cold Hum Away. Around his waist, he wore a black jade plate. Isn't that the jade card in the hands of those people who came after them in the northern Warcraft forest outside the cave? What's that jade card? Cloud Dance I ground a cold, see to that 19 ask away. Well. Do you think you are qualified to know? However, at this time, the remaining light from the corner of their eyes swept to the three bodies not far away, which were gnawed by the red snake. When two people see clearly, that can barely see is that thin Lu Sen. 18 squinted, "You killed Lu Sen." Lu Sen is the exclusive beauty pharmacist around the queen, with a high status. Therefore, they met Lu Sen several times. But did not expect to see his body here. However, it also made the two assassins think of something, his face suddenly gloomy and creepy. It seems that in the northern Warcraft forest, you really killed several of them. At the beginning, the dragon rudder sent 9 assassins to go with a samurai, but there was no news. Even the left forward disappeared. This woman is really weird. He intruded into the land of the king of beasts and provoked Phoenix, but he still lives to the present. No wonder the queen will send 2 of them to pursue and kill him. Well, she can't escape today. Come on, don't talk to her, just take her head and go back to the office. 18 Cold voice a fall. They drew out their tacit sword and attacked it. However, just as they were about to start, Yun-woo suddenly asked, "I've always wanted to ask, where did I offend your master? Need to send you 2 big assassins after me? Isn't that overkill?" 1819 heard, cold hum. "I want to play the game of procrastination again. I won't be fooled by you this time. As long as you live, you will offend my master the most. Therefore, leaving your life to me is the best end result for you." As soon as their voices fell, they saw 2 figures, straight up, flashing, and the long sword was full of murderous attack on the clouds. The cloud dances, the cold light of the eye ground is a flash, but the foot is a flash, hastily dodges. Although the speed of her wind element has been improved, she still does not have a positive 1-on-2 strength. However, it's not so simple to want her to give up. In the hand's silver needle, a flash, cold on, suddenly shoots toward two people. At the same time, a long sword in his hand also flashed out. With the fastest speed, he went straight up to the nearest 19, and the edge of the sword stabbed him. 19 pupil mouth a shrink, face a ferocious chili, body a twist, hand long sword swish and sweep. I'll take down your head first if I send it to your door. As soon as his voice fell, he drew out his knife with the fastest speed. He attacked Yunwoo Powder Neck with the power of thunder and lightning, and planned to cut off his head with one knife. And also at the same time, Cloud Dance behind 18, also directly monopolized all her retreat. Yunwoo's face changed slightly. Almost for the first time, my heart moved, and the space elements came out of the void. Under the fatal attack of the two assassins, my body directly disappeared in the same place. The attack failed. People just disappear in front of them. 1819 cannot help but suddenly alang. But then, a flash of surprise flashed in their eyes. It's the breath of space elements. She even has space attribute. The sharp light of 18 eyes flickered. 19 looks ugly. This wench, what kind of monster is it? Space element and thunder element are special attributes. As early as hundreds of years ago, it never appeared again. But now, this woman, not only has multiple attributes, but also has this special spatial attribute. It's not a monster. What is it? Astonished, the bottom of their hearts are more tacit understanding of the killing. Such a person, absolutely cannot live, otherwise, it is too terrible inside the space. Girl, with your current strength, you are not the opponent of those two human beings. Bai Lao's voice rang out. I know. Cloud Dance doesn't know, it's just in the face of assassins who are also good at fighting, 1-on-2, she is obviously at a disadvantage. What's more, these two assassins are still big assassins, and their speed and attack are not under her. She will suffer from a frontal attack. Now, the problem is that these two assassins, as soon as they make a move, will cut off her way back and leave her nowhere to escape. However, every time she uses the space element, she obviously feels that her physical strength and Yuanli are rapidly consuming. This is not the way to go on. What to do? In the Cloud Dance mind quickly turned to think of a way, a sigh light ring out. Girl, before I fall asleep, I'll make an exception and help you again. It's Bai Lao's old voice. Without waiting for Yunwoo to react, a strong breath poured into her body from the necklace on her neck. What level of power is that? Yunwoo didn't know. She just felt that at that moment, her body was in a kind of incomparable sea and emptiness. It was like that at this moment, she had enough power to pierce the sky. The strong feeling of power, full of temptation, intoxicating. However, Yunwoo quickly regained her mind and flashed out of the space at the first time. 1819, always stay in the same place, no advance, no retreat. Because, they are very clear, the use of space elements, absolutely impossible to move the bit. They wanted to kill her at the moment she came out. So, when the Cloud Dance figure flashed out, the two people's eyes were sharp, and the tacit attack was also attacked in that instant. But before the two attacked, a breath of terror suddenly attacked, and their bodies were directly bounced away at that moment. At this moment, the bottom of their hearts is a flash of horror. What a strong breath. What's going on? Yunwoo didn't plan to give them any chance to react after she came out. Purple shirt's figure, a flash of speed, towards one of them. Hoo-hoo, the voice of Su Feng. Silver flash, in that 19 suddenly stare at the moment, throat has been directly pierced, bloody smell spread in the air. 19. 18 in the body, a steady, reaction over the face changed greatly exclamation. Cloud Dance sneered and drew back the sword, it's your turn. The voice is extremely bloodthirsty indifference, in the black eyes is that extremely cold killing intention. Body shape a move, residual shadow almost empty across, blink of an eye, she stood in front of the 18. You, who are you? At this moment, 18 clearly feel that strong breath on her body. Just now that strong breath, unexpectedly as she sends out. Back cannot help tingeing a cold sweat, some creepy at the bottom of my heart, what's the matter? Isn't she just level 7? How could it be so terrible? Want to know? Go to the hell hall and ask. The cold voice brushed gently. 18 suddenly surprised, almost had no time to attack, a cold light has swept. Throat, blood spatter. 18 that open big eyes are full of horror, staring at the cold incomparable bloodthirsty cloud dance, the panic in the pupil unlimited amplification. The body, at the moment of swallowing chi, fell back straight. What the hell is going on? They chased her for more than a month, and every time she ran away in such a mess, why did she just enter the space for a while, and come out with a terrible force like killing God? Why on earth? I'm afraid I really have to ask this question from the Palace of Hell. However, it was not long before the 18 fell to the ground, Chong. Suddenly, the sound of the sword on the ground. Yunwoo's face turned white and his body softened. He knelt on the rock with one knee, and his physical strength seemed to take off in an instant. Good. Just now, the force of terror in her body, which can be proud of the world, disappeared in an instant. By the way, it seems that she also emptied her physical strength. At this time, the whole body is aching and weak. However, Yunwoo quickly took out the necklace around her neck. I can see that the luster of the necklace is fading, and it is gradually recovering its old color. Bai Lao, how do you feel? Girl, what I can help has already been helped, after that, you can do it yourself. Weak and subtle sound, as if from a very ancient place. Cloud Dance can't help but feel a shock. Bai Lao, Bai Lao. Her call did not receive any response. Because the seal has been closed again. A trace of remorse ferments in her heart. If she can have enough strength, it will not waste its own strength again and again to help her. Maybe, it will be able to survive until the moment when her body revives. But at this moment, Cloud Dance in the bottom of my heart has set off a huge cold. Queen. One day, I will tear you to pieces. In the distance, suddenly came the footsteps of many people. Hurry up, I just heard the fight. Mr. Liu, they must be in the valley. Hurry up. The cloud danced and looked up, sweeping towards the valley. I saw dozens of people coming quickly. Cloud Dance can't help but frown, because now, her body is in a serious collapse, temporarily can't start. Just, didn't wait for her to get up and leave, the bodyguard who came, already saw her with sharp eyes. Who is it? With a shrill cry, we can see that the leading figures have jumped in the air. In a twinkling of an eye, they stand not far away from the cloud dance. Who are you? The leading man looks at the cloud with dignified eyes. However, the bodyguard beside him swept the corpse not far away. Chief bodyguard, look, it seems to be Mr. Liu. This word falls, lead a few people line of sight, immediately followed that line of sight to see. The red snake was still surging in the corpse, and his face was almost destroyed. However, his clothes and the features of his thin bones could be seen at a glance. Several people's faces can be said to change in a flash. Brush. Several people's swords were drawn out. Who are you, a woman? I'm so bold that I dare to kill our Lord Liu. You're impatient. One of the guards snapped. And then, dozens of bodyguards from behind have also come. When he saw the corpse and the red snake, his face changed slightly. He drew out his sword and was fully prepared for battle. This is a wave just flat, a wave again. Yunwoo is depressed. However, he still grasped the sword in his hand and stood up slowly from the rock. Looking at those people, there was no fear in their eyes. She is Yunwoo, and she is also a killer. Faced with life and death several times, she cannot change her face. What's more, these people at this time. But at this time, the head of the bodyguard, when he glanced at the corpses around, there was a flash of surprise in his eyes, and then a shock of surprise. Because he found that there were 2 assassins besides their master Lu and their 2 6th-level bodyguards. The logo on the clothes of the 2 assassins is Dragon Rudder. What is the origin of this woman? Can you kill them, Lord Lu and 2 6th-level bodyguards, as well as 2 assassins in Tianlong Rudder? Who are you? Did you kill our Lord Lu? Looking at the cold cloud dance, the bodyguard put away the shock of his heart and raised his anger. They are all under Lu Sen's command. Adults are killed in their guards. If they don't find out the murderer, how can they be better off? What do you say? The cloud dances, the corner of the mouth outlines a sneer. In the dark, she is already breathing. Just give her a little time to recover her strength. Chief bodyguard, she is the only woman here. Who else is there besides her? Yes, don't talk nonsense with her. No matter who she is, just kill her and avenge Lord Lu. In this way, we can go back to work. The words of the 2 bodyguards made dozens of bodyguards behind them agree with each other. Yes, kill her. Kill her. The captain of the guard's eyes sank as he listened to the shouts of the guards. Now he has many enemies. Even if the woman has 3 heads and 6 arms, she can't kill so many of them. Take the opportunity to get rid of her. Thinking about it, the chief bodyguard raised his hand and said coldly, listen to the order, let's go up together and kill this woman to avenge Lord Lu. Kill surging momentum, tacit agreement to answer, the bodyguard on a gesture. Just see, dozens of people draw sword, immediately toward Cloud Dance quickly attack to come over. When Yunwu's eyes were cold and his toes were moving, he was preparing to wrap them with wind elements. Bang! A sound like thunder suddenly exploded in front of those people who rushed to the Cloud Dance. The bomb was so powerful that it shocked the first few people in front of it. What are you doing? Are you really ready to fight with these people? A gentle voice suddenly came from behind her. Yunwu turned his head. When he saw the man with white clothes and white gauze behind him, his brow wrinkled slightly. Nanganji? Why is he here? Under the white gauze, the man's good-looking lips slightly raised. What a stubborn woman. It seems that without waiting for the reaction of Cloud Dance, the white sleeve brushed, the long arm took up her slender waist, and their figures flew up in the air. White gauze gently brushed her cheek, a pure breath, inexplicable, let her feel a sense of calm. As if surrounded by the cleanest white clouds in the world. Cloud Dance can't help turning his head, but, at the moment of turning his head, he was stunned. I saw that under the wind, his white veil was lifted by the wind, revealing his face under the white sand. I thought that in this world, there was only Dragon Qingxia, the man with the most beautiful appearance. But I didn't expect that the appearance under Nanganji's veil could be called the existence of beauty. However, it's not his handsome appearance that makes Cloud Dance stand out, but the one on his forehead. Scared? Gentle voice, dyed with a smile sounded. The Cloud Dances to return to the spirit, light way, have no. This answer, let him that good-looking thin lips more up. After the thunder and smoke dissipated, their figures disappeared at the other end of the valley. Chief bodyguard, I seem to have fled to the back of the valley. Several of them were injured by the blast. Chase under the angry and commanding voice of the bodyguard, people were ready to chase. All of a sudden. A gust of Su Feng suddenly blew up, a strong and inexplicable breath, as if from a distance quickly down in the air, directly attacked dozens of people on the scene. Everyone, almost subconsciously alert to the crisis, raised his head and looked into the air. I saw the figure of a man and a woman, has flashed from the distance. That's a strange speed. The man, dressed in white, is just like the fairy. However, his face is covered by half a ghost mask. He has a pair of golden eyes and is bloodthirsty, which makes people feel creepy. Behind him, however, was a beautiful woman in light red. She was astonishingly beautiful. There was a charm in her willow eyebrows. Such a woman looked delicate and harmless. Who are you? I don't know why, seeing the man in white, the head bodyguard felt cold in his heart. To think about it, it's not only the chief bodyguard, but also the dozens of bodyguards who secretly hold the sword in their hands, with a sense of danger in the face of a strong enemy. Hearing this, the man in white scanned the situation around his eyes. The thin lips under the mask outlined a bloodthirsty arc. Dead man, why do you need to know so much? Man's voice, dyed with a cold smile, sounded like a spring breeze. All the bodyguards present were stunned when they heard the speech. The dead? What do you mean? Is when they understood, their anger rose from their hearts. But at this time, without anyone's reaction, the woman in light red in the air was attacked like a ghost. With a flash of cold light and a brush of sword in her hand, she immediately took off their heads. Blood stains open. Shadow like magic, sword like cold light, straight into the crowd. In the twinkling of an eye, more than 10 people fell to the ground as corpses. That's very fast. Because this seemingly harmless woman is an assassin whose strength has reached the 6th level. When the captain of the bodyguard calmed down, his face was shocked. Be careful. Come on. She's a level 6 assassin. Ah. But as soon as his words fell, a scream suddenly rang out. Aggressive defense, but still can't resist the sword of the late strength of the 6th level. In the air, the thick smell of blood, with the fierce murderous spread. At this time, the scene is startling. The head bodyguard's face had already changed. However, the number of people in his side was so large that she could not kill them all at once if she killed them so quickly. Suddenly keep calm angry shout away, line up, array. I see. I'll give you an order. The scattered bodyguards began to have a regular pattern. It's true that the team is in a row, fighting against each other. Ruolin, who was in the process of killing, has nowhere to start. It's useless. The proud and empty man in white flashed across his eyes. In an instant, a fierce air attack. The figure in white turned into a killing light, like a ghost from hell, directly involved in the formation. Bloodthirsty cold light passing by. Blood, splash. The chief bodyguard looked at the dozens of people and was shocked to find that they were destroyed in this instant. However, he didn't have time to turn around to escape, cold light to flash, head directly moved away. Rolling on the head on the ground, his eyes were wide open, and his fright was fixed forever. Maybe he didn't understand until he died. Where did they provoke such a terrible person? It's Ruolin's incompetence that makes the master's hands dirty. Please let the master confess. Ruolin looked at the clean white clothes, but the bottom of her eyes was the murderous man with a bloody radiant in his mouth. Her heart beat a little faster. 10 years ago, since he saved her that moment, to his this kind of heartbeat, as if never stopped, her eyes deep is that infatuated love. However, it is still a good cover-up, bow the head of the apology. Because, he never likes to be bound by feelings, but also does not allow anyone under his hand to be emotional to him. Under the mask, the golden pupils' bloodthirsty eyes gradually faded, and coldly glanced at Ruolin. Go and give me to you. The task has been completed. Later, I will go back and get the punishment myself. Yes, Ruolin nodded respectfully. Long Shao raises his eyes. Jin Mao just glances in the direction of Nangong Yi and Yunwu's departure, and his eyes are slightly deep. Then, his clothes brushed, and his figure leaped into the sky. Lord! Ruolin wanted to open her mouth and call, but his figure had just gone in the direction of the two figures. What's the relationship between that woman and her master? Although the distance is a little far, it is not difficult to see that the woman who was rescued is the woman who was willing to cut her hand and give blood in the auction house not long ago. Looking at the direction of Long Xiao's disappearance, Wolin's eyebrows wrinkled, and her eyes grew colder and sharper. Flying carriage. To be honest, cloud dance is really the first time to sit in this advanced thing since I came to this strange world. I couldn't help looking around the carriage. I found that there was more than 10 square meters of space. There was a small table in the middle. There were all kinds of tea and refreshments. It was not only luxurious but also exquisite. And on both sides, it's the soft couch. If it wasn't for the blue sky and white clouds whirring past the windows on both sides, and the occasional sound of winged horses stepping on the clouds outside, the cloud dance would not believe it. This space is just inside the carriage. However, at this time, a pair of resentful eyes is not a blink of an eye at her. In this Nangongyi side, in addition to that Xiaoqing, who can have? Have you seen enough? If you also want to sit on the soft couch, then sit up together. I don't mind. Cloud danced that slightly pale face, jokingly looking at him. Xiaoqing smells speech, face a stink, cold hum who want to sit with you, hum. Originally, he and his son wanted to go back to the imperial city, but his son suddenly left, and soon brought back the woman. As a result, he took up his seat so that he could only sit on a small hard stool. However, that's not the point. The point is the young master of his family even asked him to serve her, serving tea and water. How can he not be complacent? Cloud Dance also didn't quarrel with him, and sat on the soft couch, and his collapsed body was breathing. However, his eyes couldn't help glancing at Nangong Yi, who was dressed in white. Since he brought her back, he never spoke, but just sat there looking at her. Did you see through my disguise in the morning? This sentence, Cloud Dance said 3 asked, 7 affirmative. Nangong Yi didn't answer. However, Yunwu noticed that his hand with the teacup stopped. After a long time, I heard his gentle voice, no matter how disguised the appearance is, the essence will not change. In my eyes, you are always you. Smell speech, Cloud Dance eyebrow couldn't help wrinkling. For a moment, some people didn't quite understand the meaning of his words. However. But at this time, suddenly a familiar breath, from far and near. Without giving Yunwu a chance to think more, a figure in white has pushed the door of the horse open. As if he had entered his own door, the old god came in. A head of strange silver, a pair of deep black eyes, a beautiful face, a white dress. Who else can it be if it's not that dragon? However, as soon as he came in, he seemed to have a long-lasting smell of blood, which made people frown. White from the front of the brush, tall body, directly sat on the soft couch beside Yunwu, arm is very natural wrapped around her slender willow waist. Cloud Dance eye ground tiny cold, the side eye glanced at him one eye. Let go. I miss you. With a low voice, instead of letting go, he wrapped his other arm around her waist and put his chin on her shoulder. His handsome face was like a dog, rubbing against her white neck. Coquettish and cute. This evil man, as if something, to him, are so natural, there is no sense of disobedience. However, his coquetry posture. But the instant let the side of the green sun hit a cold shiver. What's going on? Who is this beautiful man? He's blind, isn't he? Does that woman look like this? Unexpectedly to her make so disgusting coquetry, as if, she is a sweet cake big beauty. The eyes are really crooked. Xiaoqing couldn't help but sympathize and despise. However, when he saw his son from the corner of his eye, he felt like crying. They came out this time, but in order to find the predestined fate of his son, we can see who they met these 2 days. One is a sick rascal, the other is an ugly woman. How can he report to the owner when he goes back? Feel the heat on the neck, spit breath, Cloud Dance, eyes slightly cold, squint up, palm turned, a silver needle flash, cold brush, straight attack that in her ear, evil blow man. You're trying to murder your husband. The big hand intercepts, the dragon inclines the evil mouth corner to outline one to put on the evil spirit way. Looking at the man smiling evil, Yunwoo was a little annoyed and pulled his hand back from his big hand. If you want to sit, just sit on the edge. Don't get so close to me. In fact, she didn't know why. When she saw him, she was so angry with him. Long Qingxia looked at her indifference, but his eyes flashed a touch of unfathomable, and said with a smile, "But I like sitting beside you. I especially like to hold you. Isn't that cheating?" Yunwoo really wanted to throw him out of the carriage, but now she was still very weak. She couldn't even pull the hand around her waist. To make trouble with him is to give him a chance to eat tofu. Finally, Yunwoo didn't care about him. Seeing that the woman didn't say a word and didn't care about him, the corner of the dragon's mouth slowly drew a curve of doting. This woman, perhaps even she does not know, her lovely. However, at this time, Long Qingxia's deep black eyes finally looked up at the soft couch opposite, the Nangong Yi in white clothes and white gauze. He said with a smile, "Long time no see, young Master Nangong." Hello, let Cloud Dance and Xiaoqing all look at the past. Do they know each other? He knows his son. The corner of Nangong Yi's mouth under the white gauze rises slightly, and his gentle voice is still calm. It's been a while, but I don't want to see the appearance of Master Long. Yes. However, I can't help it. If you bring my woman up, then I can only go with you for a while. That words, die with eyes in the overbearing claim. Cloud Dance smell speech, eyebrow a wrinkly, originally want to open mouth. The gentle smile of the voice, but has been gently whisked. Master Long is really joking, your confidants have always been many, my friend looks ordinary, can't be a member of your confidants, but, take you away, it doesn't matter. Dragon Qing evil eyes slightly cold, but still evil spirit smile way, is it? I can't see that Mr. Nangong is very eloquent, but... His long arm overbearing a force, directly Cloud Dance fell into his arms, my woman, but temper is very big, not everyone can become her friend. What does he mean by that? The cloud dances and hears the speech, a burst of sullen at the bottom of my heart. Reach out, want to hold the big hand of her shoulder to pull away, but the man's hand, but with iron clamp like, no matter how hard she is, it doesn't move. Long Qingxia, let me go, Sullen words have not finished, the next second, but was a hot breath to seal. Suddenly opened his eyes, looking at the magnified handsome face, always calm Cloud Dance, unexpectedly for a time some brain crash. Remember, men love face. In the future, don't refuse me like that in front of other men. I will be very sad. The voice of magnetism, dark dumb with evil spirit, rings in her ear. Said, the man that slender fingertips, temptation-like stroked her that moist red lips. That feeling, very ambiguous. Cloud Dance suddenly reaction come over, cheek a red, but some angry. Want to clap his hand, but found that his hands have already been a big hand in his hand, a bully hug, let her whole person rely on his arms. Don't move, darling, I will hurt you, touched her head like a dog. Cloud Dance is really some brain, this man, in the end a few meaning. However, at this time, she suddenly felt that the palm of his hand holding her hand, a warm current gradually injected from her palm. Her body, which had been exhausted, began to recover slowly. He's using Yuan Li to help her recover. Cloud Dance frowns of slant head, see, he of face evil spirit is handsome, breeze light cloud pale smile, looking at opposite of South Palace E. Vaguely, from the depths of his eyes to see a rejection of the cold. At this moment, she had a feeling that he had just acted as if he was jealous. Is that so? This man, jealous? Cloud Dance eye ground brush once put on a suspicion, in the heart, inexplicable some strange feeling rises. Nangong Yi has been looking at the scene. There is not too much expression on his face under the veil. However, the hand holding the teacup has never had the action of drinking tea since the dragon came in. In fact, the dialogue seems very familiar. However, in fact, it is only the second time that the two men really face each other. The first time was when he sneaked into his room and took his blood. However, it seems that both of them have no intention to say anything about their first meeting. When he came out, Long Qingxie drove on land with a one-horned white horse. It took about 5 days from the imperial city to Longxi town in the north. But this winged horse flying carriage only took 3 days from the border city of Los Angeles to the imperial city. 3 days later, outside the imperial city, the luxurious flying carriage landed in a more remote place. The door inlaid with gold and jade was opened, and a figure fell to the ground. Then, the dragon in white fell to the ground. Mr. Nangong, thank you. Yunwu looks into the carriage, and Nangong Yi in white says thanks. In addition to these 3 days, he also came to rescue when he was in the valley. Nangong Yi's mouth is slightly raised. Looking at her, there seems to be a kind of indescribable gentleness, and her voice is still as gentle as the spring breeze. When we meet next time, I will send you a jar of Baihua wine. Wen Yen. Cloud Dancer Leng, this is to admit, he saw through her disguise early. However, Yunwu said politely, thank you first. Nangong Yi nodded and said nothing. After a while, the dragon-winged horse quickly spread out its snow-white wings and flew up in the air, dragging the exquisite luxury carriage towards the city. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared in mid-air. Why, so affectionate-looking, reluctant to give up others? Standing on one side of the dragon Qingxie, hook the corner of the mouth, smile a face of charm. His voice seemed casual, but there was an inexplicable momentum. Yunwu then turned his head and glanced at him. If you don't talk cheap all day, do you feel uncomfortable all over? Cloud Dance also raised the corner of the mouth, not smiling. In the past 3 days, the man's words aimed at Nangong Yi, Cloud Dance, can be said to be a real insight. What is the degree of not saying dirty words can turn poison? Sometimes, Cloud Dance can't understand. This man sometimes seems to be a little cold and bloodthirsty, but his behavior is always childish. Long Qingxie's black eyes twinkled. When he heard the words, he couldn't help but smile. Except for you, I'm afraid you can't find another one in the world. Is it? Cloud Dance raised his mouth, reached out and patted the corner of his clothes, and said with a cold smile, unfortunately, that dragon little doesn't think so. The beautiful confidant around you can be said to envy others. What? Jealous? Cloud Dance a cold smile, do you think I have that need? Long Qingxie smiles, and his eyes are cunning and deep. Do you know what Long Shao is waiting for in his life is always a woman who can stand side by side with him. The woman standing beside him. You mean her? Yunwu squinted at him, but the beautiful woman's face flashed in her mind, yes? But unfortunately, I don't know. I only know that I'm not interested in glib men. Cloud Dance said lazily. Long Qingxie's slender arm stretched out, and Yunwu was swept into his arms without any sign. It's a heartless woman, but I like you so heartless. Head down, that beautiful face is close at hand, that is dyed with a trace of ambiguous heat, gently brushing her earlobe. Long Qingxie. Yunwu pushes him away. Toes a move, the figure immediately avoided him a few steps. Then he looked at him and said, okay, I've returned to the imperial city. If there's nothing wrong, I'll go my separate ways. After returning to the imperial city, she seems to have too many things to do. The first thing she did now was to go back to Yun's home first, take some dragon blood from the forbidden area, and revive her body. Nangong Yi's blood, before Long Qingxie got on the carriage, she had asked for it from him. Now, the only thing she lacked was dragon blood. You are a woman with no conscience. As soon as you come back, you will leave me alone. How could Long Qingxie not know what she was thinking? However, after returning to the imperial city, he also had something to deal with immediately. So, he joked with her and left after a few days to find her. However, along the way, even before that, he had never told her that his identity was undeniable, and his heart was a little lost. But she only allowed herself, that's all. The streets of the imperial city are still bustling. However, no matter how prosperous the market is, Yunwoo is not in the mood to go shopping. After entering the city, she went through the streets and alleys as fast as she could, went around to the remote back door of Yunfu and quietly entered. The guards in the Cloud House are still so strict. So, after Yunwoo entered the mansion, he didn't go back to the courtyard. Instead, he went to the shabby house in Househan. Before, Long Qingxia in the back mountain, dug a channel into the forbidden area. There is a shortcut. Of course, it is convenient to take a shortcut. But he thought that the passage had been sealed by Yunqi for a long time. But Cloud Dance also can only unload that camouflage first, restored the pale morbid face of Cloud Dance before. After dark, avoid everyone's eyes and ears, sneak into Jingxin Garden to find the old man. The wind blows gently. Who? Inside, Yunqi, who is in the process of recuperation, suddenly opens her sharp eyes. Grandfather, I haven't seen you in the past few months. I've improved a lot. A light laughter came, only to see the door open. Cloud Dance that figure slowly came in. At the sight of Yunqi, his sharp eyes suddenly brightened. Girl, you are back. Yunqi gets up and walks over to her. His eyes scan her several times. But the fundus of the eye suddenly raised a touch of astonishment. The middle of the 7th stage. This wench just went out for less than 3 months, and came back 7 steps. How is that possible? But the breath on her body is not fake. Cloud Dance smell speech, is also a little surprised. But she has been hiding her breath. She has never released her breath. Can he feel it? It seems that during this period of time, Yunqi's strength has really improved. But it also shows that she needs to be more careful in the future, because there are too many hidden dangers. There was an accident, so I came back a little late. Is everything okay at home? She asked, naturally, whether the false identity of her replacement had been identified. I believe that during this period, the queen must have someone come to inquire about the truth. Cloud Qi-yang mouth smile, rest assured, everything is still safe. This time, please grandfather. Yunwoo is very polite. When Yunqi hears the words, he looks at her as if he is not angry. What do you say, a girl? I'm your grandfather. What's trouble? However, that day, thanks to your friend, even the Empress sent the old doctor himself, he was fooled. I really have some skills. Thinking of the evil-looking man that day, Yunqi looks at Yunwoo with an inexplicable look in her eyes. In his impression, there was no such-looking young master in every family in the imperial city. Isn't this girl sick in Househan Mansion all the year round? Where did she know such a strange and dangerous man? However, it is obvious that his curiosity cannot be answered. Friends? Cloud Dance frowns, the eye ground flashed a trace of doubt. She didn't remember what other friends she had in this strange world. He is a handsome man with silver hair. He claims to be your future husband. Cloud Qi looks at her way. A head of silver. Isn't that the dragon's evil? He had been back to the imperial city before. The cloud dances and frowns. What's the matter? Isn't he your friend? In fact, Yunqi wants to ask whether she is really her future husband. That day, that man, the tone is not small. However, he can feel it. He seems to be really nervous about this girl. The clouds are dancing and speechless. Until he was silent for a while, he looked at Xiang Yunqi and asked, Grandfather, have you sealed the passage to the forbidden area in the back mountain? Hearing the words, Yunqi was stunned. Then he looked at her suspiciously. Girl, don't you want to enter the forbidden area? She needs dragon blood. Naturally, she needs to go in. But why does Yunqi say, "Yi"? Did the man go in? Yunqi sighed and said helplessly, in the forbidden area, there are cannibal vines, poisonous snake and python, and the demon dragon. What do you say you go in for? However, when the girl is old, she will naturally do what she wants to do. Okay, I won't ask much about the old man. Let's go. I'll open the door of the forbidden area while it's dark. The cloud dances and the corner of the mouth rises slightly. Sometimes, the old man is as smart as anything, but he is also very cute. In the dark, Yunwoo follows Yunqi to the forbidden area. Because a few months ago, someone broke into the forbidden area without permission. After the red fire dragon collided with him, Yunqi sent someone to guard outside the forbidden area. Yunqi appears in the dark and walks over openly. Master! Why are you here so late? The one on duty tonight is an old guard in Yunfu. Seeing Yunqi coming, he asked respectfully. With a dignified face, Yunqi said, "Go back. I want to investigate how the forbidden area is closed. You go outside and watch. Don't let people come in and disturb you." Yes, the bodyguard nodded respectfully and then retreated. Watching the bodyguard leave, Yunwoo walked out of the dark night. But I also noticed that the simple stone gate before was now built with a thick and complex stone gate. Yunqi turned his head, just on his serious face, he suddenly changed into a grinning face. "Girl, it's so dangerous in here. Do you want your grandfather to accompany you in? This old man is quite suitable for acting." Cloud Dance can't help but slightly raise the corners of his mouth and shake his head. "No, just tell me how to open the stone gate." She thought, after taking the dragon's blood, she revived her body in it by the way. "I don't know how long it will take, and even if something happens, she won't be disturbed." Finally, Yunqi didn't say much. After opening the gate of the forbidden area, Yunqi turns around for a long time outside, and then he starts to walk away. As soon as I entered the forbidden area palace, it was still dark without any light. As soon as the palm of Cloud Dance turns over, the flame leaps from the palm and lights up all around. It was not until I got to the corridor area of the lower palace that I heard the click of the mechanism. Ben's dark surroundings suddenly lit up. That ferocious claw of the ivy, still climbing all around the wall. However, the Cloud Dance did not have the sense of crisis when it first came here. Familiar, they went into the palace. Along the way, can occasionally hear the wall that cannibal rattan surging sound, some python hiss plate in the corner, the wall. However, none of them attacked her. Around about half a cup of tea time, finally, came to the underground palace. Hiss. Rustle. The boa constrictor and cannibal vine, which are mostly hovering inside, make a surging sound as soon as they see the Cloud Dance coming in. When they fix their eyes, they all automatically give her away. It seems that these little things recognize her. In the spacious palace, I didn't see the red fire dragon. Brother Long. Yunwoo did not go to the magma pool to find it, but raised his voice and called out. It's like calling old friends. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds, roar. A sound of dragons singing came from under the ground. Then, in the middle of the magma pool in the hall, a huge red dragon shadow suddenly leaped out. The dragon clouds are tumbling. In the twinkling of an eye, the mighty red fire dragon hovered over the palace and looked down at her. "Little girl, have you become a summoner to let me out?" Cloud Dance looked up at the red dragon and waved to it with a grin. "Come down, you're too tall. My neck is sour." Red dragon smell speech, discontented frown, but still from the air landing, standing in the spacious palace. "Well, now is it all right?" Cloud Dance nods with a smile. "Okay, but I find that I haven't seen you for many days. Brother Yun seems to have gained a lot of weight." Fat. I've been hungry for hundreds of years, but I haven't had a good meal. I'm still fat. Okay, let's just say, did you come to let me out? Red Fire Dragon low deep thick voice way, the beast eye is that impatient. I haven't seen you for a long time. You've got a lot of temper. If you let go, you'll be let out, but you don't have the ability for the time being. Cloud Dance Light Smile, toward it walk past of say. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.